Hi everyone, my name's Truis. I'm a solutions architect with Veeam. I've been with Veeam now for about 3.5 years, and I've been in IT now for about 27 years. And in that time, I've seen many different cycles of IT. I've seen many different ways that businesses have addressed data protection, and more importantly, seen many different ways in which companies have tried to recover their environments in the case of disaster. In many different cases, this has ranged from good, bad, and even terrible. So today what we thought we'd do is take you through a bit of a discussion around how you can ensure that your environment has a scalable, robust, and documented way of addressing data protection and other forms of protection inside your environment. And so how customers are looking at using that today is through the Essential 8 framework. And the Essential 8 framework is a great framework which allows you to provide many different layers of protection through your organization. And rather than just relying on that number 8, the regular backups portion, apply controls and rigor throughout your environment to ensure that not just the data protection environment is safe and secure, but every aspect of your environment is. And so if we take a little walk around the wheel, we can see that starting at the control application, control is number 1. And application control, whether that's application control from a backup perspective or a front-end production perspective, is extremely important for you to control. The right people have to have the right levels of access inside your environment to the right applications that they wish to consume. Moving around the wheel, we can see that there is also application patching that needs to be applied. That goes beyond just the standard application patching for things like data protection, but application patching through your production environment, ensuring that if there are any vulnerabilities in the underlying applications that you're consuming and publishing to your users are effectively protected against any zero-day malware attacks. Moving around, you have users every day interacting with external people. Those external people may or may not be trusted. And if they aren't trusted, configuring Microsoft Office macro security settings will ensure that if someone does try to embed a malicious piece of code into an application or spreadsheet that one of your users are accessing, that it won't go on to infect and ultimately lead to an exposure event within your own business. As you come around further, user application hardening. So this goes to the applications that a user is actually using. So while we have a look at the very top and we talk about application patching, the user applications are more about I'm running Adobe Flash on my system, but Adobe Flash has a vulnerability. If that's not patched as a user application, then potentially I could be compromised, which leads to my business being compromised. And so providing application hardening throughout the environment beyond just those key applications is critical in circling the loop and closing the door and making sure that your environment is safe from the would-be bad actors that are out there. Restricting administrative privileges is another key thing that needs to be applied within your business, not just to things like data protection administrators, but to every person inside your environment. The more rights you assign to users, the greater the risk your environment faces based upon how much access or how much exposure that particular compromised individual will have. So, for example, if I have administration rights to a server and my account was compromised because my Adobe Flash was hacked through some sort of patch, they get my password, they would then have the ability to log on to that server and potentially do things that they weren't supposed to do, such as embed malware, maybe put in a network listener to see if they could capture anyone else's usernames or passwords as they were logging into the same systems, and then eventually span out and get more and more access to my data. Patching operating systems, again, another great way that bad actors get into people's environments. There are a plethora of ways and patches out, or rather vulnerabilities out there at the moment that are exploited by hackers. And so patching your operating systems with the highest level of risks are critical in ensuring that you have safer systems in your environment with less risk from being compromised. And implementing a multi-factor authentication process is a great idea as well. That ensures that should my password, for example, become compromised, it reduces the amount of applications and systems that people can utilize that password with in my environment if I'm using multi-factor authentication. Because what will happen is they'll be asked to provide a code, but as most people find today, multi-factor authentication usually comes through to a mobile device, and that mobile device would suddenly start pinging that I'm trying to log into multiple systems and can I please provide my pass or my authentication code, or do I approve this access? That becomes an additional alert to the environment that someone is doing something malicious within it, and some investigation is probably warranted. Lastly, regular backups, and that's really what I'm here to talk about. Ensuring that you have your backups there and available in your environment, and that your systems are recoverable should the worst ever actually happen. And so one thing you've got to remember is that recovery is key. Being able to recover your data is absolutely critical. And so many of you would have heard many of us in the data protection industry talk about the 3-2-1 rule. So having 3 different copies of your data, 2 different media types, and one of it should be offsite. And so that's been the mantra for many, many years. And the difficulty with that mantra becomes when a customer's environment grows and it exceeds a certain point, you start to have many, many, many tapes in that one of which is offline or offsite methodology, because you have, as you see in that 2 different media, one being on disk and one being on tape. If your disk is compromised, then you only have tape for recovery. The recovery time becomes extremely lengthy. And so Veeam's been thinking about that. And really what Veeam has been thinking about is how do we extend that 3-2-1 to be more secure? And so within Veeam, we've started to think about the 3-2-1, 1/0 rule. And so adding that additional option of one of those copies should also be offline, or for want of a better term, immutable, allows you to recover that data more efficiently, faster, and making your recovery times a lot quicker. And lastly, if you are going to back up your data, make sure there are no errors in your data. And that's a big fault that we've found with tape over the years, is that yes, I have a copy on tape, but when I come to recover it, actually it's not being kept in the best condition. Some of the tapes are a bit older and they've perished a bit. And so what I thought I had from a backup recovery point no longer exists. So I'm losing more and more data because I'm having to go further and further back to find a decent copy of data living on tapes somewhere. So once you have a backup, ensuring there are no errors and that it is available for recovery is key in ensuring that you are ready should a disaster recovery event occur. And one thing you need to be aware of is that getting hit by ransomware is a disaster recovery event. You treat it pretty much the same way. And so when we went out to businesses and we asked, how prepared are you for a disaster recovery? Only 18% came back and said that they were. Only 18%. So more than 80% of customers or businesses that we spoke to were unsure that they could effectively recover should a ransomware event or disaster event hit their business. And that really is quite astounding. Going through a process to ensure that you are safe, secure, and recoverable is critical, especially in today's market. Part of that is documenting, understanding how your environment plugs together, understanding your tier 1, your tier 0, your tier 2, and even your tier 3 applications, how they work, what are their underlying plugin based services that are required to deliver those systems is essential. And it's essential because when you are thinking about how to bring up services, when to bring up services, or how critical services are, understanding how they interact and how they deliver the outcome back to your business is going to define how you actually build your disaster recovery plan. So is it that in a disaster recovery you need to bring up some core systems first? What are those core systems? Then what databases or application stacks live at the next layer that we need to ensure are ready before we start enabling the middleware or even front-end systems to our end users and customers for them to be able to consume. So going through that process of understanding how your environment plugs in, how your business operates, and which systems and services are key and critical are essential to building and documenting a great disaster recovery plan. And a really good thing to do is once you've done that, and once you have your backups, once you're doing your tests of backups, is to do a full DR recovery and do it often. The more often you do a disaster recovery, the more assurance you'll have that in the event of a disaster, such as ransomware, you'll be able to recover quickly and efficiently, instead of at the time of an event or at the time of a ransomware event, you are stuck, you are running around trying to ensure that you can bring systems back online in the fastest possible manner. Much better to be tested and prepared than to be left wanting. And that is the most important thing. It must be proven to work. And the only way that you can prove that it works is to test that system. And how can you test that system? Well, that's really done through levels of automation. And your tool sets should be able to provide those levels of automation for you. Now, at the end of our last session that we had in Brisbane, we got asked a number of different questions. And the three top questions that I think I got asked, both at that event and from customers when I'm talking to them, are these three. And so I thought I'd take a moment to really go through it and just explain a little bit about them and answer them here on this call today, just so that you all have in your mind some questions that have been asked and hopefully prompt you to ask some new and interesting questions as well. So ones that I get asked are, how do I know how exposed my business is? And that's a very, very good question. And the answer is quite complex, because actually the only way you'll know how exposed your business is to go through an IT maturity process audit. And once you go through the IT process maturity audit, you'll begin to understand that it's not just one thing that defines how exposed your business is. It's a multitude of things. And so when you go through an IT maturity model, you'll see that there is the human element that is taken into consideration. There is the processes within your business that are taken into consideration. And then lastly, the technology stacks that you have. And through that IT maturity process model, you're able to define, is there cultural changes that you need to undertake? Are there process changes that need to be undertaken? Or are there technology options that need to be taken? And what you'll find is when you go through this is that you'll find out exactly how exposed you are, where you need to make changes within your operating models, both from a process, culture, and technology perspective, to reduce the amount of risk that you have. And that's important. It will reduce, it will not eliminate. And we rely on people like Truis, our partners, to come in and assist you to go through those models and to help you understand where the right processes, cultural changes, and technology alterations need to be made. The next most common question I ask is, how can I recover quickly from a ransomware event? And that really depends upon the types of technology and media that you're using to recover from. Now, if you're using an immutable disk location, then the recovery is very, very quick. You're able to take an event where you've become compromised to having operational systems up and running very, very quickly. And so what we find is people who don't have immutable disk locations and are relying on tape tend to more often pay ransomware attackers to get their data back rather than try and recover, for the very reasons I've explained before. And so by having that immutable location, you're actually able to recover faster than the decryption software is able to decrypt your data. And more importantly, you're actually assured that your data can be recovered because you're doing a 3-2-1-1-0 methodology with your data, where you're testing the moment that you back up and frequently testing your DR plan so that you know that you can recover at any time, at any point, efficiently and safely. The last question I get asked quite commonly is, what is the best strategy for protecting against ransomware? And that's quite hard, because there is no best strategy for protecting against ransomware. There is merely limiting your exposure, there is merely enhancing your security posture, and more importantly, there is just protecting your systems against data loss. Now, once you come to that realization, building a strategy in order to reduce your exposure, enhance your recovery methodology, and really test that environment, you'll be able to move forward and ensure that if you do get compromised, or when you do get compromised, you're able to recover fast, efficiently, without an additional ransomware payment. Now, hopefully you've got some more questions for me. I'll be sitting here and hopefully answering them. But other than that, thank you very much. Back to you.